Hey historians, welcome to Decoding the Test and a quick look at the modern age. Now 25% of your test is going to be over the modern age, and that's a chunk of material. So as always, I want to caution you, if you want that higher level score, if you want to guarantee that, know the details that you see on the slide in front of you. What we're going to go over today though is what the test has covered again and again and again. That breaks down to a few key areas. Today we're going to look at the Middle East. Okay, modern history is, in a way, a history of the Middle East and how America has interacted with it. What are you going to see in this category? You're going to see the conflicts between the Arab countries and Israel in the Middle East. You're going to see how that resulted in the gas crisis of the 70s and early 80s. And you're going to see how Americans have reacted to that. So let's go into this. Here you see a slide that's labeled Wars Between Israeli and Arab Forces. And it's asking you how President Jimmy Carter attempted to end the hostilities between Israel and the Arab countries that surrounded it. The answer is the Camp David Accords. The Camp David Accords were a peace treaty. Jimmy Carter invited the leaders of Israel and the various Arab countries to a conference to try to hammer out a peace treaty where everyone could get along, at least in the short term. It's what President Carter is best known for, is the Camp David Accords. Now this is actually a fairly positive, development in the history of the Middle East, the Camp David Accords. Most of our interaction with the Middle East is not going to be positive. In fact, pretty much only the Camp David Accords are going to be a positive step forward. Now, because the United States has been very supportive of Israel in its fight against the surrounding Arab nations, the Arab nations have traditionally fought back against the United States using economics. One thing they had plenty of control over was the world's oil supply. In fact, there is a group made up of mostly Arab nations known as the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC. OPEC determines how many barrels of oil get put out on the market every year, and thus they control the price of oil. Well, due to America's unstinting support to Israel, the nations of OPEC voted to basically cut off America's oil supply. When that happened, gasoline prices soared through the roof. Gas had to be rationed. You had to line up for hours at a gas station, like you see in the picture here, to get gasoline. This is a result of Americans' support of Israel. You get asked this question over and over. What is causing gasoline prices to spike in the 70s? It's always our support of Israel. In this case, it's actually a little bit more vague. Answer choice C. Conflicts in the Middle East disrupted the distribution of oil. That's a really vague answer choice, but it makes sense when we consider, okay, America is supporting Israel in Middle Eastern conflicts. OPEC is then cutting off America's oil. It fits. Here's actually a fairly modern question. You might be asked about the Persian Gulf War. In 1991, America sent troops to liberate the country of Kuwait. Kuwait had been invaded by an Iraqi regime led by Saddam Hussein. Now, the first Persian Gulf War, and notice I said first, the first Persian Gulf War liberated Kuwait, but did not overthrow Saddam Hussein. That was not a goal of the first Persian Gulf War. This says the Persian Gulf War, the answer is C, the nation of Kuwait was liberated. We also went back to Iraq with the specific purpose of overthrowing Saddam Hussein, forcing him out of power, and discovering if he had any weapons of mass destruction. But that was years later, decade and more later. Sometimes it's called the Second Persian Gulf War, or simply the Iraq War. If you see Persian Gulf War, that is the war to liberate Kuwait, not to overthrow Saddam Hussein. So answer choice B is a tempting answer, but a wrong one. Finally, speaking of the Iraq War, here's a quote from George W. Bush talking about bringing stability to a free Iraq, overthrowing Saddam Hussein. This is referring to the Second Persian Gulf War, the Iraqi War, the Iraq War. The question is an interesting one because it refers to economics. What happened as a result in the U.S. economy? We spent a lot more money on the American military during the Iraq War. The Iraq War lasted years and years and years. It was a little bit similar to Vietnam. There was mission creep. We couldn't seem to get out of it. Answer choice H. The federal debt increased dramatically as a result of military spending. What do you need to know about the history of the Middle East in the modern times? Well, first you need to know Jimmy Carter's Camp David peace treaty, the Camp David Accords. You need to know that American support of Israel led to a gas crisis when OPEC cut off America's oil supply in the late 70s. You need to know that the First Persian Gulf War was fought to liberate Kuwait from Iraq. And you need to know that the Iraq War, or the Second Persian Gulf War, was fought to remove Saddam Hussein from power. If there's no questions, comments, or screams of angst, I'll see you in the next video.